24 Sanam Chantier has been following the situation on the ground. She's joined us on set. Sanam, welcome. What's the latest?
Shona, by way of background, these protests kicked off around a week ago, and they started in the very holy city of Mashhad, which is one of the hearts of the country's clerical establishments, and then it spread very quickly to other cities, including the capital, Tehran. Now, speaking to protesters in Iran, they're telling us that they themselves are puzzled by how quickly these protests spread, especially because there's no one leader behind them. Now, arrests have been made, as you mentioned, but according to Iranian state television, whether this is true or not, these people are not being detained on a long-term basis because the authorities don't want to add fuel to the fire. Now, regarding those that have been killed, according to an official from the Western Lorestan province, 2 protesters were killed amid clashes, but this particular official is saying that it is jihadists and enemies of Iran that are behind these killings and that no bullets were fired by the country's police forces. Now, in addition to this, and this is something that I really witnessed in 2009 in the aftermath of the disputed elections, internet has been slowing down intermittently in the country to stop the flow of information. That's, of course, how we're getting all this social media footage. Now, the big question is, what is the driving force behind these protests? Well, there is certainly dissatisfaction with the country's government. Promises were made by the administration of President Hassan Rouhani to establish a détente with the international community, which he did, but also to improve the economy in the aftermath of that historic nuclear deal in which Iran scaled back very significant parts of its nuclear program in exchange for limited sanctions relief. Now, inflation at the moment, because the economy is in tatters, stands at around 10%, which is extremely high. Unemployment has increased by 1.4% in comparison to the last year. And I myself was in Iran last week and I saw extreme price hikes with basic food products like eggs and meat. So we're not talking about luxury products here. Now, in addition to this, some Iranians have been expressing dismay with Iran's intervention in neighboring countries like Syria and Iraq, saying, pay attention to us, stop giving your money away. Now, there is this desire to link all this dissatisfaction with the ailing economy, with foreign intervention, but my experience, Shona, of covering Iran for over a decade is that actually the main problem was that expectations were not managed in Iran. Of course, that's something that's letting the administration down at the moment. And lastly, the question is, who are these people? What faction do they belong to? Because in Iran, we don't have political parties, we have factions. The moderates, the principalists, the conservatives, the hardliners. Now, up until this point, there have been some signals by sources that I've been speaking to in the country that the protests started by the hardline faction in Iran, the anti-Rouhani, anti-nuclear deal faction, to make him look bad. They started in the wholly conservative city of Mashhad, but they didn't realize how far they would spread. Now, at this point in time, they appear to be extremely organized. I'm going to show you a list now, Shona, of a plan of all the protests that will be, hopefully will come up shortly, of all the protests that will be taking place across Iran today. And it has all the lists of the names, the times. So this now appears to be somewhat a methodical organization of these protests.
So the protests have been co-opted?
Well, that's what it seems like. Certainly not until this point, but now you can see that it's being organized. But up until this point, the ultra-conservatives in Iran are blaming foreign forces for what are being deemed as opposition protests inside the country.